Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BSF Canada, and Syngenta Canada.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to the Soybean School. Today I'm down in Fisherville, Ontario, catching up with Johanna Lindeboom from Clark Agri-Service. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, and thank you for the invitation. I want to get into this field. We're in a situation where, we're trying to evaluate the spring planting emergence in this soybean field. And hey, you've got a little bit of everything going on here and maybe some challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're standing here, I actually don't think it looks too bad. I'd keep this soybean crop all day, but it's a bit of a dangerous time of the year. You can drive by the field at 80 kilometers an hour and start to see the rows. But we get over the top of this hill towards the back, and we got some issues we're dealing with. This was planted the week of May 15th. We had a ½ inch to 1.5 inches rain on May 20th, and anything planted in that week leading up to the rain, we're starting to see some issues with, whether it's crusting, vigour, cold injury.
So Johanna, let's move around this field, check out what's going on, and look at some of the things that you need to consider when you make an overall replant decision on that field.
Okay, let's take a look. So first thing, on clay replants, everybody's going to think crusting. But what I think we've got going on here is actually some cold injury. When we look at these plants, they're probably a ½ an inch before they're out of the soil surface. They've been planted for almost 3 weeks now. And, why on earth isn't it coming out of the ground? So if we look at this little plant here, really there's not a whole lot wrong with it other than the fact that it's been 3 weeks to emerge. What I think we've got going on, 2 weeks ago we had 2 nights that had frost on them. And if you didn't have frost, you at the very least had some really low night temperatures. The week previous, we had a frost or some low night temperatures. And all the while, these plants were trying to get up out of the ground. Our daytime temperatures would get up to maybe 19, 20 at the highs, but then they drop right back down at night. And I really think these plants are just sort of losing their vigor and they're running out of steam. So when beans are in the ground for 2.5 to 3 weeks, we can see a lot of issues happening. There's a lot happening in this field. We have insect injuries starting on a couple of these. You turn them around, you can see that their tails are starting to dry up. Those beans are definitely not going to make it. And then we have this swollen hypocotyl happening. That's more of what you would see if you have a true crust, and we can see where the ground is really hard and tight as well. This bean actually managed to push through, but you get this really swollen hypocotyl here, and then when the bean tries to poke through the soil, it'll actually snap off. We've got some of that happening down in the ground here, and those beans are less likely to make it. What you want to see is a healthy soybean just beneath the surface. You don't want to see a swollen hypocotyl. You want to see it nice and green. Those are the plants that you want to be patient with, and the ones that have a chance to push through and make it. So what we have going on here is some open seed trenches. If you looked at this field, you'd instantly say, oh, farmer planted when it was too wet. But we can get some of these issues when the field is too dry as well. Especially on the heavy clays, when it gets really hard, you can slice through when it's dry, very similar to when it's wet. Farmer probably had down pressure increased, and that can smear the sidewall a little bit. And while the beans are still making it out of the ground, if we're going to replant, if you have this type of scenario going on, even when you do get a rain, the seam is going to split and you're going to wick out any moisture that you did have in that seed trench. So this is something really to consider if you're going back in and replanting the fields. You want to be behind your air seeder, behind your planter, making sure that you can properly close those trenches so that we can have a successful replant.
So Johanna, we've been around this field. You've got some issues, and this is probably a replant situation. But hey, first of all, could we wait it out?
In this case, I would say no. Most of the plants we were digging up were non-viable. The ones with the dried out roots, the ones that are breaking off at the surface, the ones that have been eaten by insects. But in other situations, waiting it might be the way to go. If you can keep this field, it's their first planted, it's going to be their highest yield. that's what you want to do. And sometimes patience is all you need.
Patience is all you need. And if not, we've got to look at our options. So, and if we're going to go for a replant, what are our options?
So first option is replant right now. But in order to do that, you have to be able to get to moisture is the first thing. In some cases, depending where you are, moisture might be more than 2.5 inches deep. I really don't like planting soybeans deeper than that. Maybe if you're on a sandy loam, but even then, you're pushing it. If you can't get to moisture, then maybe you want to look at planting into dry soil, 1.5 inches deep, and you can wait for a rain. Our third option is wait for a rain. It'll sort of soften up the ground again. You'll have moisture to plant into and then go. That is a tricky one depending on how many acres you have to plant.
Yeah.
So be a little bit careful with that, and you never know quite how much rain we're going to get either. But if you only had 1 or 2 fields to do, you can kind of pick your window and then go at it.
Johanna, great stuff. Thank you for taking the time to spend with me on the Soybean School. We'll catch up with you later in the summer.
Sounds good.